In the heart of the Soviet Union, under the cover of night, a secret was unfolding. At the Baikonur Cosmodrome, a place where rockets touched the sky, a young cosmonaut named Alexei Ivanovich was preparing for the journey of a lifetime. This mission was cloaked in secrecy, so much so that even Alexei knew little about its true purpose. He was chosen not just for his skills, but also because he could be trusted to keep secrets. The air was cold, and the stars shone brightly as Alexei, dressed in his spacesuit, walked towards the waiting spacecraft. It was a new type of spacecraft, different from the ones he had trained in. They called it Sputnik 5. It was supposed to be better, faster, and able to go farther into space. The countdown began. Alexei's heart raced as he heard the numbers tick down.
2, 1, and booster ignition.
And then, with a roar that shook the ground, the rocket lifted off. Alexei felt a powerful force pushing him back into his seat as the rocket soared higher and higher. He watched through a small window as the Earth fell away beneath him. It was a sight so beautiful it took his breath away. As the spacecraft entered space, everything became calm. The loud noises of the launch were gone, replaced by a silence that was both peaceful and eerie. Alexei looked down at the Earth. It was like a giant, colorful ball spinning slowly. He felt a sense of pride and awe. He was one of the few people who had ever seen this view. But something was not right. As Alexei tried to contact ground control, all he heard was static. His heart sank. The communication system, which was his only way to talk to Earth, was not working. He was all alone, with no way to tell anyone what was happening. Days passed, and Alexei's situation grew more desperate. He tried everything to fix the communication system, but nothing worked. He started to realize that he might never return home. This mission, which had started with such hope, was now a fight for survival. Alexei wasn't sure if anyone on Earth knew what had happened to him. He wondered if they were looking for him or if they had left him to his fate. The loneliness of space felt heavier with each passing day. The spacecraft, once a symbol of his dreams, now felt like a prison. Even in his despair, Alexei knew he had a job to do. He began to record everything he saw and experienced. He described the Earth, the stars, and the feeling of being in space. He talked about his fears and his hopes. He knew these recordings might never be found, but he hoped that someday someone would hear his voice and know what had happened. As his supplies started to run low, Alexei's thoughts turned to his family and friends. He missed them deeply and regretted that he might never see them again. He recorded a message for them, telling them how much he loved them and how sorry he was that he wouldn't be coming back. As days turned into weeks, Alexei's situation became more difficult. He carefully managed his limited food and water, knowing they had to last as long as possible. The small cabin of the spacecraft felt like a tiny room that kept getting smaller every day. He floated in the zero-gravity environment, a constant reminder that he was far from home. Every day, Alexei looked out of the small window at the Earth. It looked so peaceful from up here, so different from the dangerous situation he was in. He wondered what people were doing down there. Did they know about him? Did they remember him? The spacecraft continued its journey around the Earth, orbit after orbit. Alexei kept himself busy by doing experiments and recording his thoughts. He hoped that these experiments would help other cosmonauts in the future, even if he didn't make it back. Alone in space, Alexei's thoughts often drifted to his past. He remembered his childhood, running through the fields near his home, looking up at the sky and dreaming of flying among the stars. He remembered his family, his friends, and the day he was selected to be a cosmonaut. He thought about his training, the hard work, and the excitement of being part of something so big. He had been so proud to be chosen for this mission. Now, those memories seemed like they belonged to someone else, someone who hadn't known the true cost of reaching for the stars. As time went on, Alexei's hope of being rescued started to fade. He knew that his oxygen wouldn't last much longer. The idea of never returning home, never seeing his loved ones again, filled him with sadness. But he refused to give up. He kept recording his messages, hoping that they would be found one day. He talked about the beauty of space, the lessons he had learned, and the things he wished he had done differently. In a small town in Italy, two brothers, Achille and Giovanni Giudica Cordiglia, were busy with their unusual hobby. They had set up a homemade listening station in their backyard, equipped with radio equipment and large antennas. Their goal was simple yet ambitious: to listen to signals from space. One evening, as they scanned the frequencies, they stumbled upon something extraordinary. Amidst the usual static, they heard a faint but distinct voice. It was speaking in Russian, and the tone was filled with emotion. The brothers listened intently, recording every word. They didn't understand Russian, but they could tell that this was no ordinary broadcast. The voice seemed to be coming from space, and it sounded like it was sending a message. Intrigued by their discovery, Achille and Giovanni began a meticulous process of investigation. They reached out to friends who could translate the Russian message and started to piece together the puzzle. The voice in the recording was that of a man, and he was talking about being in space, seeing the Earth, and conducting experiments. He also spoke of loneliness and a longing to return home. The most chilling part was his mention of running out of oxygen. The brothers realized they might have intercepted a transmission from a lost cosmonaut, someone who had been sent to space and forgotten. They scoured newspapers and radio reports for any mention of a Soviet space mission, but found nothing. It was as if this cosmonaut didn't exist. Driven by a mix of curiosity and a sense of duty, Achille and Giovanni decided to make their discovery public. They shared the recordings with local newspapers and radio stations, hoping to shed light on the mysterious cosmonaut's fate. Their story quickly captured the public's imagination. People were fascinated and troubled by the idea of a forgotten astronaut lost in space. The media began to ask questions, and soon, the story spread beyond Italy, reaching audiences worldwide. However, the Soviet Union denied any failed missions or lost cosmonauts. They maintained that all their space missions had been successful, and every astronaut had returned home safely. The mystery deepened, and the brothers' discovery became a topic of international debate. As the story of the lost cosmonaut gained attention, people from different parts of the world started to come forward with their theories and information. Some claimed to have heard similar transmissions, while others speculated about secret space missions and cover-ups. Experts in space history and radio communications weighed in, some supporting the brothers' claims, others dismissing them as a hoax or a misunderstanding. The brothers stood by their discovery, insisting that what they had heard was real and that it was their duty to tell the world about it. Amidst the growing controversy, Achille and Giovanni continued to listen to the skies. They hoped to find more evidence, more clues about the mysterious voice from space. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the signals from the unknown cosmonaut ceased, leaving only echoes and unanswered questions. Despite the skepticism and doubts from many, Achille and Giovanni remained steadfast in their mission. They continued their nightly vigils, scanning the skies for any more signals that could provide clues to the lost cosmonaut's fate. Their small backyard station became a beacon of hope, attracting the attention of fellow amateur radio enthusiasts and curious locals. The brothers meticulously documented every transmission, every unusual signal they intercepted, hoping to find a pattern or a repeated message. Their dedication turned their humble hobby into a serious endeavor, a quest for truth amidst the silence from official channels. The story of the lost cosmonaut and the Italian brothers' discovery began to inspire others around the globe. People started to question what else might be hidden in the vastness of space and what secrets the superpowers of the world were keeping. Groups of amateur radio operators, inspired by the brothers' efforts, started their own searches. They set up listening posts, shared information, and formed a loose network of individuals united by a common goal: to uncover the truth about the hidden space missions. As the search continued, more and more curious signals were intercepted by the network of listeners. Some claimed to have heard faint voices, others reported unusual beeps and static that seemed out of place. Each new discovery added to the mystery, creating a tapestry of unexplained phenomena that pointed to the possibility of more lost cosmonauts. The Giudica Cordiglia brothers analyzed these new signals, comparing them with their original recording. They hoped to find a connection, a clue that could lead them to a definitive answer. But with each new piece of the puzzle, the story only grew more complex. As the months passed, the lack of concrete evidence began to weigh heavily on Achille and Giovanni. They faced criticism and skepticism, not just from the public, but also from experts and officials. Many accused them of fabricating the story or misinterpreting natural space phenomena. The brothers understood that without solid proof, their discovery would always be questioned. They needed more than just recordings. They needed undeniable evidence that could stand up to the scrutiny of the world. Determined to validate their claims, Achille and Giovanni embarked on a mission to gather more evidence. They reached out to scientists, astronauts, and experts in space technology, seeking any information that could support their theory. But the Soviet Union's tight control over its space program and the lack of transparency made their quest challenging. Every lead seemed to end in a dead end. Every inquiry met with silence or denial. The story of the lost cosmonaut and the Giudica Cordiglia brothers' discovery had now captured the attention of people worldwide. The mystery transcended borders, igniting discussions and debates in various countries. The possibility of a human being lost in space, forgotten by history, touched the hearts and minds of many. International media outlets began to cover the story more extensively. Documentaries and news reports featured interviews with Achille and Giovanni, showcasing their small listening station and the recordings they had captured. The world was divided. Some saw the brothers as heroes unveiling a hidden truth, while others viewed them as mere storytellers weaving an intricate tale. Despite the growing interest in their discovery, the brothers faced significant challenges. Experts in space communication and astronomy started to analyze their recordings, with some questioning their authenticity. These experts argued that the brothers' equipment was too primitive to capture space transmissions accurately, and that their interpretation of the signals could be flawed. Achille and Giovanni faced a critical moment. They knew they needed more than just their recordings to convince the skeptics. They started collaborating with other amateur radio operators to triangulate signals and gather more scientific data to support their claims. Realizing the need for more expertise, the brothers reached out to various scientific communities and space enthusiasts. They hoped that by collaborating with others, they could strengthen their case and perhaps uncover more evidence about the mysterious cosmonaut. Their efforts led to a series of collaborations with amateur astronomers, engineers, and even retired space program employees who were intrigued by the mystery. These collaborations brought new insights and techniques, enhancing the brothers' ability to analyze and interpret the signals they were intercepting. Then, a breakthrough occurred. A retired engineer who had worked on early space missions came forward with information. He claimed that there had been several unpublicized test flights before Yuri Gagarin's historic journey, some of which might have carried human passengers. This revelation provided a new context to the brothers' findings and reignited the public's interest in the story. It suggested that there might indeed be truth to the claims of lost cosmonauts, victims of the ruthless space race that marked the era. As this new information surfaced, the narrative began to shift. What was once dismissed as a fanciful tale was now being looked at with renewed interest and seriousness. The world started to realize that the mystery of the lost cosmonaut might hold more truth than fiction. In the heart of Moscow, within the walls of a nondescript government building, a group of high-ranking Soviet officials gathered in a dimly lit room. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with secrecy and urgency. At the center of their discussion was the growing international attention on the supposed lost cosmonaut, a situation that threatened to uncover truths they had long sought to keep hidden. One of the officials, General Orlov, a stern man with years of service in the space program, addressed the room.
"But we must contain this situation,"
he declared. "The capitalist world must not learn of our failures. They must believe that Gagarin was our first and only attempt at manned spaceflight before success." Enter Ivan Kozlov, a seasoned KGB agent known for his loyalty and efficiency. Orlov turned to him, assigning him the critical task of managing the situation. "Comrade Kozlov, ensure that any evidence that contradicts our official narrative is dealt with. We cannot afford any leaks or truths coming to light." Kozlov nodded, understanding the gravity of his mission. His job was to safeguard the Soviet Union's image at all costs, a task he had performed countless times. But this time, it was different. The thought of a lost cosmonaut, a man who had served his country and was now erased from history, weighed heavily on him. As Kozlov set out to execute his orders, he grappled with a growing sense of unease. He had always been a loyal servant of the state, doing whatever was necessary for the greater good. But the idea of erasing a man's existence, a fellow patriot who had sacrificed everything for their country, stirred a conflict within him. He began his task by reviewing all the files related to the early space missions, looking for anything that could link back to the rumors of lost cosmonauts. The more he read, the more he realized the extent of the cover-up. There were gaps in records, unexplained mission logs, and even mentions of test flights that didn't match the official timeline. Kozlov's next step was to ensure that all evidence contradicting the official story was destroyed. He visited various facilities, collecting reports, recordings, and any documents related to the early space missions. Each piece of paper, each bit of evidence was a reminder of the secret they were keeping. One night, as he stood over a burning barrel, watching the papers turn to ash, Kozlov felt a profound sense of loss. These were not just documents, they were pieces of history, testimonies of bravery and sacrifice, now reduced to nothing. As the flames flickered, Kozlov couldn't help but think of the lost cosmonaut. What had been his name? What had been his dreams? And how many more like him had been erased from the annals of history, just a shadow in the orbit of secrets? Ivan Kozlov, the KGB agent, continued his mission with a heavy heart. Each step he took to erase the past only deepened his internal conflict. He started to see this not just as a battle for the Soviet Union's image, but also as a struggle between truth and duty. As he traveled across the country, visiting space program facilities and collecting sensitive materials, Kozlov encountered others who shared his unease. Scientists, engineers, and even fellow agents expressed their concerns in hushed tones. There was a sense that something valuable, something human, was being lost in this quest for supremacy. Amidst his travels, Kozlov heard whispers of dissent. Some within the space program began to question the morality of erasing the achievements and sacrifices of their colleagues. They spoke of lost friends, of missions gone silent, and of the heavy burden of secrets. Kozlov realized he was not alone in his moral dilemma. These whispers of dissent gave him a sense of solidarity, a feeling that there were others who believed in the importance of truth. However, the fear of repercussions kept their dissent quiet, confined to shadowed corners and behind closed doors. As Kozlov delved deeper into the archives, he discovered more about the lost cosmonaut. The man's name was Alexei Ivanovich, a skilled pilot and a dedicated soldier of the Soviet Union. Kozlov found old photographs, mission logs, and even personal letters that Alexei had written to his family before his launch. With each new discovery, Alexei transformed from a mere file number to a real person in Kozlov's eyes. He imagined Alexei's excitement, his fears, and his dreams as he embarked on his space journey. Kozlov felt a growing need to honor this invisible hero, to ensure that his sacrifice was not forgotten. Torn between his duty and his newfound respect for Alexei, Kozlov faced a critical decision. He could continue following orders, erasing every trace of Alexei and the other lost cosmonauts, or he could find a way to preserve their memory, even if it meant risking his own career and safety. One night, sitting alone in his modest apartment, Kozlov made a fateful decision. He would save some of the documents and recordings, hiding them away in a place where they could one day be found. It was a small act of defiance, but for Kozlov, it was a way to keep the truth alive. With this decision, Kozlov set out on a new mission, one that was personal and dangerous. He carefully selected documents and recordings, creating a hidden archive of the lost space missions. He knew that if this archive was ever discovered, it could change the narrative of the space race and restore the honor of those forgotten cosmonauts. Ivan Kozlov, now on a mission of his own making, worked cautiously to create his hidden archive. He chose a secluded location, an old abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Moscow, known only to a few. Here, in the dusty silence, Kozlov stored the documents and recordings, each piece a fragment of a forgotten history. As he arranged the files, he found himself pausing over Alexei's letters. They were filled with hope, pride, and love for his family. Kozlov felt a deep connection to Alexei, a man he had never met but whose life and dreams he now knew intimately. He promised himself that he would find a way to honor Alexei's memory. Kozlov knew the risks he was taking. If the Soviet authorities discovered his secret archive, he would face severe consequences. But the weight of the truth was heavier than the fear of punishment. He believed that one day when the world was ready, Alexei's story and the stories of others like him would be told. To protect the archive, Kozlov developed a careful routine. He visited the warehouse only at night, taking different routes each time to avoid suspicion. He told no one, not even his closest colleagues, about his activities. The hidden archive became his solitary burden, a secret he guarded with his life. As the years passed, the political landscape of the Soviet Union began to change. The once impenetrable veil of secrecy started to lift, giving way to a new era of openness and reform. These changes brought hope to Kozlov, a hope that the truth might finally emerge. However, with the changing times came new dangers. The warehouse where Kozlov had hidden the archive fell into the path of a planned development project. The risk of the archive being discovered grew every day. Kozlov faced a dilemma: leave the archive and risk its destruction, or move it to a new location, increasing the chance of being caught. Kozlov decided to move the archive. He carefully packed the documents and recordings, preparing to transport them to a new hiding place. As he worked, he realized that he could no longer carry this burden alone. The truth about Alexei and the other lost cosmonauts needed to be protected, even if he could not be the one to do it. In a decisive move, Kozlov reached out to an old friend, a trusted colleague who had once shared his concerns about the cover-ups. He revealed everything, entrusting his friend with the task of safeguarding the archive. Together, they moved the archive to a new location, an even more secluded spot known only to them. With the archive safe, Kozlov felt a sense of relief. He had done what he could to preserve the truth. He hoped that, in time, the world would learn of the sacrifices made in the shadows of the space race, of the brave souls like Alexei who had reached for the stars but were lost in their orbit of secrets. Years had passed since even Kozlov and his friend had moved the hidden archive to its new location. The world outside had continued to change, and the once mighty Soviet Union was now part of history, its secrets slowly coming to light. Then, on an ordinary day, a group of construction workers stumbled upon the hidden archive while working on a new development project. Buried beneath layers of dust and time were the files, recordings, and photographs that Kozlov had preserved. The workers, realizing the potential significance of their discovery, alerted the authorities. The news of the discovery spread quickly. Historians, journalists, and former space program officials gathered to examine the contents of the archive. Among the faded papers and crackling recordings, the story of Alexei Ivanovich and other lost cosmonauts came to life. The public was captivated by the revelations. The recordings of Alexei's voice, his observations from space, and his final messages were broadcasted worldwide. People heard the voice of a man who had been erased from history, a voice that spoke of dreams, fears, and a silent sacrifice. As the truth emerged, there were mixed reactions. Some people were shocked and saddened by the sacrifices made in the name of the space race. Others were angry that such secrets had been kept for so long. But many felt a sense of closure, a feeling that the lost cosmonauts were finally being honored. In Russia, the discovery prompted a re-examination of the space program's history. Officials acknowledged the early, unpublicized space missions and paid tribute to the cosmonauts who had been part of them. Monuments were erected and anniversaries were commemorated, celebrating the bravery of those who had ventured into the unknown. For Ivan Kozlov, now an old man living quietly in a changed world, the discovery of the archive was a vindication of his efforts. He watched from afar as Alexei Ivanovich and his fellow cosmonauts were finally recognized for their contributions to space exploration. Kozlov felt a sense of peace, knowing that he had played a part in preserving the truth. The legacy of the lost cosmonauts, once hidden in the orbit of secrets, was now part of the world's shared history. Their stories, once confined to whispers and shadows, were now told openly, a testament to the courage and sacrifice of those who reach for the stars. As he prepared to unveil the truth, Kozlov understood that he was crossing a point of no return. But the stories of Alexei Ivanovich and the other lost cosmonauts deserved to be told. Their echoes in the void of history needed to be heard. Ivan Kozlov, with a mix of fear and determination, released the dossier to the public, unveiling the hidden stories of the lost cosmonauts. The documents, filled with names, dates, and testimonies, were a bombshell sending shockwaves across the world. The media seized upon the story, with headlines proclaiming the discovery of the Soviet Union's long-hidden space secrets. People around the globe were captivated by the tales of bravery and sacrifice, the story of men like Alexei Ivanovich who had been erased from history. However, the reaction to Kozlov's revelations was not entirely what he had hoped for. Amidst the initial shock and sympathy, a wave of skepticism arose. Critics questioned the authenticity of the dossier, suggesting it could be a fabrication or a ploy in the ongoing political chess game of the post-Soviet world. Experts and historians debated the evidence, with some dismissing it as conspiracy theory material. The lack of corroborating evidence from other sources and the decades of secrecy and misinformation surrounding the Soviet space program fueled these doubts. As time passed, the story of the lost cosmonauts began to take on the quality of a legend, a tale shrouded in mystery and intrigue. It became a popular topic among conspiracy theorists, who wove it into a larger narrative of government cover-ups and hidden histories. The truth, as presented by Kozlov, was lost in a sea of speculation and disbelief. The real-life sacrifices of the cosmonauts were overshadowed by sensational theories, detracting from the solemnity of their story. Kozlov, witnessing the transformation of his life's work into a contested conspiracy, felt a deep sense of disillusionment. He had hoped to restore honor to the lost cosmonauts, but instead, their story had become fodder for endless debate and skepticism. He realized that the truth he had fought to uncover was too entangled in the complex web of historical and political narratives to be accepted unequivocally. The legacy of the cosmonauts, rather than being clarified, had become even more ambiguous and contested. Years passed, and the story of the lost cosmonauts, as revealed by Ivan Kozlov, settled into a strange niche of semi-acknowledged history. It remained a topic of fascination, a blend of fact and myth that continued to captivate the imaginations of people around the world. Documentaries and books explored the subject, each offering its interpretation of the events. The Judica Cordiglia brothers' recordings, Kozlov's dossier, and the tales of missions like Alexei Ivanovich's became part of a larger narrative about the space race, one filled with heroism, tragedy, and secrecy. In the present day, the lost cosmonaut story had taken on a life of its own. In schools, on internet forums, and in popular culture, discussions about these early space explorers continued. They were no longer just historical figures. They had become symbols of the human cost of ambition and the complexities of uncovering truth in a world of shadows. For some, the story was a cautionary tale about the sacrifices made in the pursuit of national pride and technological prowess. For others, it was a testament to the courage of those who dared to venture into the unknown, their names etched not in monuments but in the hearts and minds of those who believed in their story. Ivan Kozlov, now an old man, lived quietly, his actions and their consequences a distant memory. He often reflected on the journey he had undertaken, from a loyal agent of the state to a seeker of hidden truths. He wondered if he had made a difference, if the voices of those lost cosmonauts had, in some small way, been heard. Though the world had moved on with new heroes and new adventures in space, Kozlov took solace in knowing that he had tried to honor those forgotten souls. Their echoes, though faint and often drowned out by the noise of conspiracy and debate, still resonated with those who sought to listen. The story of the lost cosmonauts, shrouded in the mists of time and ambiguity, became a part of the tapestry of space exploration. It served as a reminder of the countless unknown stories that lie hidden behind the grand narratives of history. The echoes of Alexei Ivanovich and his fellow cosmonauts, though lost in the vastness of space and the complexities of earthly narratives, continued to inspire a sense of wonder and a quest for truth. Their story, a blend of fact and myth, remained a haunting and poignant reminder of the human dimension of our journey to the stars.